to the sixth session of the International Certificate Program on Human Resource Management for Excellence. Today we have with us an eminent speaker, Mr. Devdutt Sarma, who is going to deliver on the topic talent management. Mr. Sharma is human resources professional with leadership experience across multiple industry verticals, to name a few: energy utility, information technology, and automotive engineering services. He is currently the Vice President and Head Human Resources at Satyam Venture Engineering Services Private Limited, a subsidiary of Tech Mahindra. In this global role, he drives talent management across US, Mexico, Germany, Japan, China, UK, and in India. His passion for organization development drives him to design and deploy innovative technology-driven HR practices that creates an empowering work culture and ecosystem that nurtures talent and strives towards building an organization that cares for its people. In his earlier role at Tech Mahindra, he has steered three centers of excellences, namely performance and rewards management, talent engagement, and young leadership program from blueprinting to global rollout. He has been in the core team driving the Tech Mahindra and Satya merger, one of the largest corporate mergers in India, for which he has been rewarded by the CEO of Tech Mahindra. Prior to this role, Mr. Devdutt was working with HCL Technologies and NTPC across different HR sub-functions. He is certified coach from International Coach Federation, USA. He holds a graduate degree in law and master's degree in personnel management and industrial relations. We welcome you, sir.
Uh, Thank you, Smarika, for sharing my profile with the participants. At the outset, I would like to first thank Professor Vishwajit Das for giving me the opportunity to interact with the participants. And nice to know that such programs is being done by ASBM. ASBM has been always leading through the forefront in organizing such programs. And hats off to the team and
Thank
kudos.
you,
Keep it
sir.
up.
So you may now continue with your deliberation, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, just to inform you, once you are done with your deliberation and presentation, we would be taking few questions from the audience and the participants, and you may go ahead and answer those questions as well.
Okay, perfect.
Thank
So
you, sir.
let me share the presentation. The presentation is visible, right?
Yes, sir. It's visible, sir.
Okay. Interesting topic, talent management strategy. And 1 hour, I'm not sure whether I'll be able to do justice to this vast topic. So still, let me make an attempt. I'm sure it would be more interactive. I would rather keep it that way instead of doing a monologue and I speaking throughout. So I have made just of 10 slides. I will walk you through, and then we can open up for questions. More of interactions, more of discussions would be really appreciated than a monologue from my end. In terms of talent management, why are you talking about this topic? That's very important. Why this topic came up for discussion and why a certification program around talent and human resources. I've changed the slide. Has the slide changed in the group also?
Mr. R.N. Mahanti, can you please mute your video? We are unable to see the presentation of Mr. Devdutt Sarma. Please. Sir, you may now go ahead, but your presentation is not visible, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It's visible now, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. And when I'm changing the slide, it is transitioning?
Yes, sir. It's perfect, sir.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, small hiccup. It does happen sometimes. So yeah, so let's go into the topic. The topic is talent management and a full-fledged two-week certification program around the talent. Why is that? What is the need for having such a program? And why there is so much of discussions around talent? So as the audience is diverse and it is globally present, starting from students to practitioners to researchers, I have tried to keep it as simple as possible so that the entire audience can learn from it and also would be able to participate and ask me questions for a conversation. So at the end of the day, when you're talking about talent, it is because of the business imperative, the need from a business perspective. If we are running a business, we have an organization to run, then there has to be run through people. There's nothing new about it, right? We're talking about running the business, growing the business, and transforming the business, right? And at the end of the day, what is an organization? Organization is a set of people coming together, either with the objective of wealth creation, or it is from a social uh, motive, whether they want to give back to the society. So if there is an organization and they have to run the organization, they have to grow the organization, they have to transform the organization, it is only through people. So people are the key differentiators. And they are the people who will ensure that the organization is either successful or it fails. So what it is all about: running the organization, maintaining the current business capabilities, and it is business as usual, whatever is in place, ensuring that those are done to the highest level of efficiency, highest level of productivity. Grow is basically from an objective of expanding the business. We cannot stay at one place. Change is the need of the hour, growth is the need of the hour. When you're talking about globalization, there is a need to grow and expand. So when you have to grow and expand, we need to do through people. It can be people who are existing in the organization or the people who are present globally, because global talent would need diversity in thought, inclusiveness, so that we are able to do business in the new geography. And we're talking about thereafter transforming. So you grow, but you have to constantly transform. So you see companies talking about digital transformation, digitalization, IoTs, fourth industrial revolution. A lot of discussions you would have come across. These buzzwords are making rounds. So there is a need to transform, change with the changing times. Else we will be defunct and will be lying by side of the wayside, and company will be closed soon. So if you see the ranking of the Fortune 500 companies, how it is changing, it is changing. The old school, the brick and mortar organizations are coming down the pecking order. The e-commerce, the IT, the digital companies are moving up the pecking order, right? So things are changing. If companies don't change, don't transform with the changing times, they don't change their business model, then they are going to perish. So there is a need to change. And when you're talking about running the business, growing the business, and transforming the business, it has to be done through people. So that is the key differentiator. That's why I wanted to focus more on this side first. Why we're talking about talent, why you're talking about people, because they are the foundation on which organizations can run, organizations can grow, and organizations can transform. So we have been talking about talent management and how does talent fit into the scheme of things, right? About running the organization, growing the organization, and innovating and changing. So talking about the first driving factor, the driving factor is the vision of the company. That is the identity of the company. What the organization wants to do, what kind of experience they want to give to people, what kind of experience they want to give to the society, what kind of experience they want to give to the stakeholders, because stakeholders have invested in the company, right? So it is about the triple P we talk about: profit, people, and planet, and how much you're able to give back to the society. So it's important that the vision will be driving the organization, what they want to do, what kind of metrics, what is the measure of success, what kind of culture they want to build in. And to translate that vision, there is a need to talk about the kind of people we would need, right? Defining the skill requirements, defining the domain expertise, defining the subject matter experts we would need, the kind of operational model, the governance structures that would be required to actualize the vision into reality. Now, once those are done, the framework is in place, the model is in place, it is important to implement those. That's the third part of it, act. And how do you act in terms of talent? It's the complete cycle. What I say is hire to retire. The entire journey of hiring to retirement has to be robust, has to be fully integrated so that we're able to provide the right kind of talent to the business to actualize the vision, what we have aspired for, what we want to do. So hiring, people development, effective real-time performance management, succession planning so that we have a pipeline in place, the talent pipeline. And most importantly, when we're investing in people, it's important that we retain the talent. The talent that has been nurtured over the time has to be retained. So that's the act part of it. So you aspire, you articulate and define what is expected, act, do it, and then see the impact. At the end of the day, as we said, when we do something, it is for the end result of wealth creation or giving back to the society if it is for a social objective. So you should do the impact analysis in terms of the share price, be in terms of the stakeholders' expectation, in terms of the business impact, in terms of the society impact. So in the entire scheme of things, this is where the talent fits in. Before even going into the topic of talent management, I'm spending a good amount of time emphasizing on the need for talent and where does it fit in the larger scheme of things. And we now go into the topic of talent management, what you have been waiting for. So if you see the graphical chart there, so I've just tried to summarize how the journey has been from a HR perspective, right? So we had this concept of welfare officers, and then over the time from a welfare orientation where the people were exploited, the workers were exploited, there was a need to have a welfare bent of mind. And over the time, the laws started evolving, the various acts started coming in across the world. Lot of protectionism came into where there was a need to ensure that the labor is respected and they have the basic rights in place. The labor management program came up and people were identified as labor manager. Over the time, it moved into becoming personal management. It matured to become personal management, which most of us are aware of. Most of the curriculums in the universities are still called personal management industrial relations. Some of them have transitioned into HRM from a branding perspective, but the very base, the foundation is personal management industrial relations. And then it progressed to become human resources management, where it is not about managing people, it is about managing human beings. Don't alienate workers from as resources. They are just not resources. They are the human resources. They are human beings first. So the emotion, psychology, the group behavior, group dynamics, all those aspects came into picture. And then the current one is what we call a strategic HRM, where we are saying that it is not about only human resources management and keep yourself restricted to developing people. You have to integrate the talent management into the organization. The initial 2 slides I was talking about, right? So it is about integrating it and becoming a business partner. So HR becomes a business partner, and when they partner with the business heads, talk about how HR can be a key aspect to the business strategy, how they can add value, how HR is vital from a talent perspective in designing and strategizing, builds more confidence among business leaders. So you have to move into becoming business partner. And Dave Ulrich coined the term business HR partnering, but the HR partner has to be a strategic partner, has to be a change agent, has to be an administrative partner and a change champion.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Give me a minute, sir. Mr. R.N. Mahanti, can you please mute? Mr. R.N. Mahanti, can you please mute? We are unable to hear, sir. Please. Mr. R.N. Mahanti? Sir, we are also unable to see your presentation.
Okay, you want me to do that again? Hold on. Probably yes. When somebody is switching on the camera, it is going off.
Right, sir. Correct, sir. Mr. R.N. Mahanti, please mute your audio.
Mr.
R.N. Mahanti.
बंद करिए ना।
Mr. R.N. Mahanti, please mute your audio.
ऑडियो बंद कर दो।
Smaraki ma'am, please remove him, ma'am, as of now.
Yeah, sir. He finally did, sir. Please continue.
Okay, fine. The slide is visible.
No, sir.
Okay. 1 second.
Yes, sir. It's visible now, sir.
Okay, fine.
Please continue.
Okay. So that's the journey I was talking about, from being a welfare officer to labor manager to personal management to human resources management to strategic HRM. So it is not a theoretical movement. It is a change in mindset in terms of how we are progressing from being a welfare oriented, basic foundational welfare oriented to strategic business HR partnering, where HR becomes a business partner to the business guys, talks the numbers, and says how HR, the talent, can contribute. So Dave Ulrich spoke about business HR partnering, right? Where the HR is a strategic partner, HR is a change agent, HR is a administrative expert. We cannot wash our hands from administration. Administrative expert, and then most importantly, the change champion. As the organization grows and moves to become innovative, we have to partner with them in terms of being a change champion. And if you remember, McKinsey in the year 1997, 2000 spoke about war for talent. So why was the word given war for talent? Because that's the vital, that is foundational. If you have the right kind of people, you have the right kind of talent, the organization can grow. And every organization is trying to grow subsequent to the globalization coming in, right? And there is a war for talent. The best talent will be poached. The best talent will be taken away from the organization. So as HR, our job is not only to attract the right kind of talent, not only retain the right kind of talent, but ensure that they develop and they're highly motivated to contribute for the organization, the vision of the company, and stay engaged with the organization. And that is what talent management is all about. But talent management is, by definition, if you have to say, is about attracting the talent, deploying the talent, developing the talent, retaining the talent, and then ensuring that they are engaged and they walk the extra mile, do little extra for the organization, because they think that they are partners and they would be able to reach the vision of the organization together. That's about talent management and the journey from becoming being a simple laborer to being a strategic partner. So we as HR professionals have huge responsibility on our shoulder because we need to be the business HR partner. So to understand to what extent talent is impacting the organization, McKinsey had done a research, a survey, and taken inputs from the business HR. So if you're talking about the entire talent management, what is really impacting the business? What is really impacting the financial performance? So three things emerged. Yes, we have a long list of items under talent management, but three things emerged. Number one is rapid talent allocation. That means the recruitment process. If you're able to quickly hire the right kind of talent and are able to deploy them, strategically push them into the required areas, that plays a very, very important role among the talent management life cycle. Rapid talent allocation. It can be internal, it can be external. External is through the recruitment process. Internal is through the succession planning, role rotations, development programs. That ensures that there is a role rotation internally also. So these are the three key levers that results in effective talent management, and that results in high performance, the financial performance. At the end of the day, when we're into wealth creation, it is all about how you're performing, how are your share prices, how do the stakeholders perceive you. If you perform well, then we'll be able to attract more and more talent. So it's kind of a circle that we deal with. Next is about the business HR partnering. I spoke about few slides back. So as HR, we have to be strategic in nature, understand the business, most importantly, understand what the business does. We are not into a policing function anymore. We are not here to talk about leave management, how many casual leaves taken, how many earned leaves taken, those are a passe. I'm not here to talk about timestamps. I'm not here to talk about what are the loans you have taken and what are the interest you have to pay, what are the documents you have to submit. These are all transactional, very, very administrative, and there are enough tools that would support us. As HR partner, it's very important that we engage with people, make them comfortable in the organization, create a positive experience, and also partner with the business so that the right talent is deployed at the right time. And the third lever, as I spoke about, is about creating that experience. As an organization, I feel connected, I feel engaged with the organization. Talent engagement is what you must be listening multiple times. The engagement is about wedded to the organization, doing something extra. I can come to my office at 9 and go back at 5 because I'm being paid for that. That is not engagement. When I take the lead to do little extra, I walk the extra mile so that I can contribute for the organization is when the talent is engaged, emotionally connected to the organization. They feel for the organization. And when they feel, they will stay in the organization, they will strive in the organization, they will speak for the organization. Stay is retention, right? Strive is doing little extra, walking the extra mile. Okay, let me take up this extra project. Let me stretch a little bit and take up this innovative project. That is what you call striving for little more. People can choose to say, no, I've been paid for 9 hours, 9 to 5, and I can leave the organization. But there are people who are more emotionally engaged. They would strive to do more. And then most importantly, the third point is speak. Speak is basically advocacy. Advocacy is when I speak about my organization to others. Who will speak? Why will I speak about my organization good? If I'm emotionally connected with the organization, right? Else we won't speak. We say, okay, fine, this job is going good. It is business as usual. But I would speak and say that, okay, we have expanded to this territory. We have acquired this market. Our business revenue has grown by this much percentage. My EBIT has improved by this percentage. This comes when I am emotionally connected and I would speak about the organization. So these three key levers really drives the organization as per the McKinsey report. There are many other factors, but the coefficient of impact by these three key levers is very, very important for effective talent management, which in turn impacts the financial performance. As I said, as an organization, we are here to create wealth. And if we have taken money from the market, that means the shareholders are there, investors are there. They also look to the organization in terms of how you are retaining talent, how you are engaging people, what is your brand value. And in the board reports, in the annual reports that we publish, attrition is one big number. Why is attrition coming up in the board report? Why? How many people you added, how many people you exited from the organization does come into the board report. We publish the director's report. We talk about people metrics. Why the people metrics has become important and comes in the director's report, in the board reports and the annual reports. It is because they are the backbone. They are the vital foundation on which organization can achieve its vision and which will directly impact the financial performance. And at the end of the day, we have to perform better and we have to outperform our peers, our competitors, right? And ensure that the organization strives towards the vision it has aimed for. So that's the journey I was taking you through in terms of what talent management is, how it has progressed over the years, and what are the key levers that really impacts the financial performance. The rapid talent allocation, that is basically ensuring that people are available to do the job. Number two, the HR team itself, right, who understands the business strategy, aligns with the business, and think the way the business does. As business is thinking in one direction, and the HR is thinking in the other direction, and there is no two meeting together, then it won't meet the strategic requirements. At the end of the day, it's about people, and it's about the skilled people at the right time. And third and most important, to ensure that people are engaged, they speak about the organization, they strive for excellence, and they stay in the organization. Else, you plan something with certain talent pool and the other day those people have exited from the organization, then you cannot meet the vision of the company. You cannot meet your financial numbers. which are immediately down the quarter, right? So these are the three key levers that will really impact the talent management. But the topic is about the entire talent management. So let's talk about the other factors. What are the factors in the entire talent management cycle? So I have come up with a integrated slide that talks about the entire talent management cycle and what are the components therein. Marika, is the line clear and the PPT visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Audio line is good?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So that was a small check to ensure that I'm not speaking to the machine only, but to the audience. So this is the integrated talent management slide that talks about the entire integration. It cannot be in silos. It cannot be in pockets. It has to be integrated together so that we're able to give a holistic experience to the employees. We call it employees, or we call them the associates, we call them the partners, different names. But at the end of the day, they are the people who will help us achieve the vision of the company, help us meet the quarterly targets, help us meet the annual targets. So the cycle starts with first and foremost talent planning. What kind of people you want? Suppose, for example, uh, recently, about 2 years back, we wanted to expand into Mexico, right? Mexico is a great country, closer to US, so people understand English over there, though the official language is Spanish. People understand English, and there is good movement of people between Mexico and US. Now, when we started planning, okay, why do you want to go into US? Why do you want to go into Mexico that way? Right? Because there's a new market coming up. There are a good amount of talent available. If you have to grow and support to different geographies in and around USA, how about going to Mexico? That was the business discussion, business thought. And then they called the HR for a discussion that, yeah, we want to go into Mexico, help us. Blank. That was the only statement given. Now the HR now goes into understanding what kind of talent is required, what is the time frame, what are the competencies for those kind of people, right? And what what are you going to achieve through those people? Do you want them to be Spanish speaking or English speaking, right? What is the proficiency level in terms of skills? Do you want them at a base level, at an intermediate level, at an experience level? What is the time frame for transitioning? What are the bill rates? When you're talking about the business that you're partnering, we being services industry, we go into understanding how much revenue the person is going to earn. So that will be a factor for us to decide what salaries we are going to offer. Then also you have to look at the minimum salary levels in those countries based on the minimum wages, based on the visa requirements. So a lot goes into first understanding what kind of talent is required. And this is aligned purely to the business strategy. If the business strategy is to expand into a new geography like Mexico, then the next supporting framework by HR is in terms of what kind of people required, what kind of skill are required. Do you have the skills internally? Do you have the skills externally? Which geography, which people have to be moved? So that is the first part of the talent management, which is talent strategy and planning in terms of which people and when they are required. Earlier days we used to call it manpower planning, right? And there used to be a cell called industrial engineering cell in the manufacturing companies whose job was to see how many people are required, and they used to do those studies, PERT, CPM, and other studies, man-machine ratios and man-megawatt ratios, number of people, number of workmen, number of supervisors. So they used to do all those kind of studies in terms of identifying how many people are required. If we have to grow by X potential, X percentage by end of this year, what is the talent pool required? Then the question comes, what is the talent gap? Do you have those internally available? Yes, no. If it is available, deploy them. If they're not available, then source them and recruit them. Here comes the next step in talent management, which is sourcing and recruiting. In this case, what happens? We're talking about a global recruitment process. So, and with the globalization in place, we have the option of hiring people globally. The whole world is one single market, right? And people are willing to travel. People are willing to explore People are willing to see new markets. So the mindset is also changing, which I'll talk about in the subsequent slides. So the next step in talent management is about global talent. By hiring them, take the help of the outsourcing consultants, right? Or you can take the help of the job boards and the job portals, which is being used. Those who are the recruiters in this participant group, they would be very well aware of the process. So it is one of the integrated process in the talent management cycle. So we started with the strategy planning, what kind of people required, when it is required, what is the talent gap, and then reach out to the recruitment team for sourcing and recruiting. Now, between sourcing and recruiting, there is a difference. Sourcing is basically the very preliminary stage, which is the skill requirement and the people who have the requirement, marrying those, shortlisting those people, job ends. Thereafter, you have the process of doing the interviews, written tests, group discussions, psychometric testings, the entire paraphernalia of identifying the right talent that meets your skill requirements, and most important, the cultural fit. The person should meet the culture of the requirement. There has to be a marriage between the individual's mindset with that of the culture of the organization. If the individual is very aggressive, very assertive, and the organization has its own pace of moving, not very aggressive, slow, very thoughtful, very measured approach, then this won't meet. This person won't be able to fit in this organizational culture. So very important here is to see that the culture, the mindset of the individual meets the culture of the organization. Though very difficult to assess in a 45 minutes, 1 hour of interaction, but if you do powerful interviews, what we call the behavior event interviews, and so powerful psychometric testing, and by having open-ended coaching conversations, you will be able to elicit those views of those individuals and see that there is a culture fit. Culture fit is done, people are hired, they are onboarded, and then they are deployed in the different locations. Now, when they are deployed, what happens? The next is about giving them the task. The task is the KRAs, key result areas. Some call it as KRAs, some call it as the KPIs, some would say that it is management by objective. Different terms are being used. In a very simple term, this is the task that individual has to deliver, right? And when they deliver, most important here is to tell them why you are delivering. It is not that because you want to get paid, you are delivering. You are delivering because your delivery, this person, this person, this person, the delivery is combined together of your team, rolls up to give the delivery of the department. Multiple departments deliver together, that rolls up to give the delivery of the unit. Multiple units deliver, that rolls up to give the delivery of the organization. So the vision alignment, the goal alignment is very important. I'm not working in isolation. I'm working because I am contributing to a larger objective. I'm contributing to the larger objective, and that is what we call the goal alignment. That way, individuals feel that yes, I'm contributing towards a larger vision of the company. They feel associated, they feel connected with the organization. So goal alignment is very important under performance management. Why am I doing this? Why this task has been assigned to me? It's a very basic question, right? So as reporting manager, as the department head, as HR, our job is to convey to people that this is the reason why you're doing this job. That is the goal alignment. And when you are doing that, you have the standard performance management process where there is KRA setting, there is half-yearly reviews, quarterly reviews, right? And then multiple RMs are there, reporting managers are there, then you take multiple reporting manager reviews through performance management process. And then we also assess something called the potential. Performance is what the person is doing currently, but maybe the person has higher potential. That means the work given is not up to the potential of the individual. There is a potential gap. So you can do performance assessment and you can also do potential assessment. So performance assessment is more from here and now. The task was given, how has the person performed? Potential is the ability of the person to take up different responsibility or higher responsibility. So that helps us in determining promotions or giving different roles or for role rotations across different functions or moving them horizontally or vertically across the organization. Maybe somebody has higher potential of managing business independently. So then we can identify that person as a business unit head whenever a new opportunity comes up. So as HR, we have a key responsibility of identifying those kind of talent, identify those sparks. Those are very, very important. In a big organization, sometimes people leave the organization because they don't see their talent being recognized. So as HR, our job is to ensure that the performance management process is fair, it is unbiased. Reporting managers don't rate people uh, on ad hoc basis. There is a scientific approach to measuring them, right? And the real sparks are identified. Further, based on this, at the end of the performance management process, there's something called a normalization process. Somebody call it normalization, somebody call it calibration. Here, what happens? This is to ensure that people are brought together, the ratings are compared, and they are ranked. Basically, the ranking process. Now, in the current era, there's a lot of discussions going on whether the ranking is right or wrong. Should the ranking continue? Some of the companies have even dumped the ranking process. We'll discuss about those in subsequent slides. So rank them and give them the ratings, right? And then based on the ratings, the subsequent action takes place. So this is about the performance management process to ensure that the performance is calibrated, performance is recorded, documented, and most important is the performance feedback. Just doing for a fitment process to give a salary revision, performance management is not required. It is a performance appraisal process. When you're talking about performance management, it is a complete holistic framework starting from goal alignment to the training and development, the complete cycle. So that there is an experience. Okay, as a person, I grow. I learn from this entire process of performance management. And then we're talking about the learning and development. So based on the feedback given, or based on individuals' performance, the training calendars are made, the leadership programs are made. Based on career aspiration of individuals, the L&D programs, the learning and development programs are made, be it the domain training program, soft skill program, and the training effectiveness is also measured by the training center, whether they have learned the classroom program and whether they have transitioned from the classroom to application at the job front by taking feedback from the reporting manager 3 months down the line or 6 months down the line, whether the learnings from the classroom has translated into real action on the ground by taking feedback from the reporting manager, by asking few questions like, did you see any behavioral change in the person? Do you see the person taking up more responsibility? Do you see the person being more proactive, depending on the training that they have been given in the soft skill? In technical skill, it is very easy to measure, right? It's very, very quantifiable, numerical. Proficiency level 5, proficiency level 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So those are clearly defined and those can be measured through the efficiency model. Next is about succession planning, right? So you hire talent, bring them, performance management, train them, and then the most important, succession planning and leadership development. At the end of the day, the organization grows, and when the organization is growing, we need more and more leaders. So there is the need to have a robust framework in terms of who would succeed whom and who would be the future leaders of the organization. It is very easy to speak about it, but it calls for a lot of efforts in having a robust succession planning model, creating a talent pipeline, a talent pool. If you have read the book of Ram Charan, which talks about the pipeline, right? Uh, I'm a team contributor first, as an individual contributor, then I move up to becoming a project leader or a team leader, where I manage small teams, then I manage managers, then I manage leaders, I manage a business house in terms of business unit, then I manage business enterprise. So it is a progression from being an individual contributor to managing small teams, to managing managers, to managing a business unit, to managing an enterprise. So as we move up the ladder, the pipeline, right, the progression calls for different kind of competencies, different kind of skill. So as HR, as talent management expert, those who are into L&D, they need to design the programs around enhancing and sharpening those skills, be it the domain skills, be it the soft skills, and ensure that the competencies are built in those individuals so that they can succeed the boss when the boss exits or the functional head moves out or retires or takes up higher responsibility. And at the end of the day, we're talking about creating a talent pool which is highly competent, can take up higher responsibilities, can challenge the status quo, right? Take up new businesses, and overall, the scale of competency of the organization moves up inch by inch. It's not easy, depending on the size of the organization. If you have to move up the competency ladder and competency capability of the organization, it has to move inch by inch. A lot of conscious effort has to be done by the talent management experts and by the L&D experts in designing comprehensive holistic programs for succession planning and leadership development. Few organizations do have some programs like a shadowing program where they can shadow the bosses. There's something called shadow board where they create a board of youngsters with whom the seniors can talk to, bounce off ideas and take ideas. It's called the reverse mentoring model also in some of the cases where there is a reverse mentoring. This is not one-on-one, it is a group mentoring where the functional heads, the delivery heads, because their thinking has been different, has been on a particular track, the thought process has been different. These youngsters come with a lot of young ideas, they're vibrant, a lot of new thoughts. So through a shadow board model, the ideas are bounced off to the juniors, the youngsters, young minds, and they will punch hole. Okay, this will not work, this might not work. So these deliberations, these iterations will help us strengthen the programs and also identify those stars, those youngsters who are coming out with great ideas as the future leaders. There can be various programs that can be run in the organization for nurturing young talent. Then at the end of the day, it's all about compensation, right? At the end of the day, my efforts have to be rewarded for the extra efforts I'm putting in, the kind of extra mile I'm walking, the extra contributions I have made. At the end of the day, it has to be competitive. You have to pay me well for the efforts I'm putting in. So comes the compensation management, which is very, very important part of the talent management. As I said earlier, there is war for talent. So if you want the right kind of people in the organization and you want them to be retained, not only you have to create a very good experience and a positive work culture, at the end of the day, money also motivates. There's a lot of debates around that, whether money really motivates or not. So let's not go into that. But it's all about a comprehensive framework, right, around skill building, leadership development, succession planning, and then paying competitively. So as a HR professional, we have to pay for performance, ensure that we create distinctions between high performers, medium performers, low performers, laggards. The compensation has to be competitive. Compensation has to be dynamic in nature, in line with the business requirement. Gone are the days where the compensation used to be same. People used to be pegged in a particular grade. It's not possible these days. So the skill can come and say that I'm contributing so much, why I can't be paid higher, right? So those kind of demands can come from high pots, what we call the high potential employees. So pay for performance, doing competitive benchmarking, what competitors in my field are paying, how I can pay better, do salary benchmarks. So it's a lot of exercise around compensation management. So this is talent management in totality, right? I'm trying to share as much of data possible such a short time because this is a very, very exhaustive topic. And most importantly, when you're talking about talent management, as I said, it cannot be in isolation. It has to be integrated. So when you're giving compensation, it has to be based on performance. So if you see, there is a linkage to performance management. When I'm giving compensation, there is a linkage to talent strategy. You see the line connected because compensation cannot be in isolation. If I have to hire the best talent for a new geography, I have to pay little more at that time. Maybe over the time, the compensation will normalize. But when I'm entering a new geography, I have to pay more because I have to attract talent, right? Compensation with leadership development. So when I'm talking about building leaders and having a succession plan around it, they have to be suitably compensated. Then only they would be putting their extra efforts for their skill development and for contributing more, right? When you're talking about talent strategy, it is integrated to succession planning. So when you're planning for talent, it did not be only recruitment. It can be through internal job postings. IJP is what we call in short. And role rotations, job rotations, who will succeed who. So it is integrated to succession planning. If you see talent strategy linked to performance management. So depending on the performance of the individual, you find who are the high performers and who are the people who are not able to perform. Those who are not able to perform will be out of the organization over the time. So that position will be vacant. So you need to identify people to fill that gap, fill that position. So it is a completely integrated system, starting from hire to retire, right? This is the entire talent management, completely integrated and based on the competency model of ability, skill, and knowledge. And these days, it is all about data. We just can't make a policy or a process out of air. It has to be data driven. There has to be metrics and systems to substantiate why we are doing this process, why not the other process. So when there is number, it is easy to convince the business, easy to sell the idea, right? So that's a beautiful saying, in God I trust, rest bring data. So when there is data, it is factual, it's a number. In a scale of 10, it is 5. In a scale of 7, it is 4. So number speaks for itself. So it is all data driven, and the future will be also based on data. And it is about data analytics, which we'll be speaking about in the subsequent slide. So this is what the integrated talent management is all about. Next slide is heavy, right? I'll just quickly talk about those. I named the slide as nuts and bolts of talent management, right? So this is further drilling down into what talent management is. It's a summary of what we do in terms of talent management. So on the left, extreme left, starting is the organization, right? And the blue vertical column and the extreme right is the business metrics and analytics. So within this is the entire talent management strategy, okay? And the foundation is the organization structure, how this organization is structured, and the talent structure is based on top of it, right? And what we have to do is have a robust talent strategy, right? Which I spoke about in the earlier slides. I've summarized and brought everything together. It took a good amount of time to make this slide, but it's a comprehensive view of, on one side, we have the governance structure, we have the risk and the compliance structure, and the other side is the metrics and analytics, and within which the complete framework. Baseline is the talent infrastructure. On top of it is the learning and capability development, right? This is basically how will you enhance the skill, how will you ensure that as an organization, we grow and learn. Peter M. Senge has used the word learning organization. The learning organization is what? Is an organization that evolves, that changes, that learns with the changing times. And the overall organization structure, the framework, the processes, the systems are so integrated that the organization changes fast, learns fast, moves faster, right? That's why for innovation, we use the term like fail faster. So if you have to fail, fail fast, and then rise, move up and move forward. Then only we can innovate and come out with new ideas and new processes. Next, on the learning vertical, which is a platform, on the left is talent acquisition, which is the recruitment process we spoke about. And at the end of the day, the talent reward. And in between them, the entire cycle of performance management, career management, succession management, leadership management, right? And what all we do though there is written over there, right? For performance management, we're talking about goal alignment, performance potential, assessments, calibration, skill gap, the training needs. In career management, we talk about defining the career tracks. How will a finance person move up? How will a HR person move up? How a salesperson will move up? What are the career tracks? Can people move crisscross? Suppose I'm talking about identifying a good salesperson. A salesperson can be directly from an MBA institute, right? Can be doing good sales, or can be an operations guy who understands operations very well, has that capability, the competency to take up sales. We nurture those talent and do those crisscross movements, identifying high potentials, assessment centers, development centers, 360-degree feedback process. These are the tools we use for succession management. For leadership management, we're talking about executive education, coaching, mentoring, ALPs, action learning projects. So we give them real projects to work on, which has budgets, which has EBITDA level tracking and monitoring, so that people feel, okay, this is what I'm doing and this is how it is contributing. Real action-oriented projects, not the theoretical classroom ones. Shadowing is very, very important model of leadership development, where young management grads or young professionals who have the talent, who have shown those sparks of taking higher responsibility, are shadowing the business leaders. Next on that is the capability and competency management in terms of behavioral indicators, competency assessment, position definitions, workforce planning towards the talent strategy. So an extension from the previous slide where you spoke about the integrated talent management, this is a summary slide in terms of what are the nuts and bolts of talent management, what all you do. We, through talent acquisition, we do branding, we try to bring the right kind of talent, we create a talent pool so that we don't have to waste time searching for resumes when there is a business need. We have our own databases, own contacts in LinkedIn, which we keep on nurturing. And whenever there's a need, quickly turn around and give to business. That's what we call the TAT, turnaround time. So as HR, it is not that we have to be restricting ourselves to only the policies, processes, and systems. We have to move up the ladder, right? Add that extra to the business, work with the business, talk to them, understand their pain points, very, very important. Understand what are the pain points they have, and ask HR how we can contribute to the business by ensuring that we're able to get the right kind of talent at the right time, that is acquire the talent. Right kind of talent are aligned to the business organization. That is alignment. Right kind of talent that is trained and developed in the organization, right? And then they are retained in the organization. That's in brief about the talent management, nuts and bolts, and how that is integrated. When we are doing all these things and planning and talking about talent and how having a robust framework, it's important to understand how things will work when we are going to redesign something. So this is a small workflow. Suppose as an organization, you are planning to make some change in talent management strategy. Be it you want to change the compensation strategy or the recruitment strategy or the performance management strategy, whatever strategy you want to change, there has to be a process flow. So this slide talks about redesigning. How will you redesign our talent management strategy, right? It can be the business plan, right? That is the basis. Then understand what are the talent gaps. Based on the talent gaps, you identify whether it is capacity building strategy, where you have to build capacity or capability, or the compensation strategy. Or you have to build a new culture altogether, depending on what is your need. We identify the gaps, then pilot run. This is very, very important. Never try to roll out a program across the organization, because you don't know how it will be perceived by the business. There can be process enhancements, and different people going through those can give multiple views, but it is not possible to collect views all together. So you pilot in one unit or in one geography and see how the response is. Based on the response, based on the learnings, we can enhance those and plug those gaps and then go for a larger rollout. This is very, very important. So whenever there is a need to redesign a process, do not try to burn the sea, burn the ocean. That's what we say, right? Don't try to change everything in one go, because this change is painful. Any change is painful. And when you're bringing any change in people processes, it will take a lot of time to accept. And people are used to one style of working. So change will be painful. So always do a complete analysis in terms of what are the industry trends, industry practices, what competitors are doing, take views from business. Always take views from business, because they are the people who are going to use it, right? They are the people who will ensure that it is successful or failure, because we cannot drive it through. It is the people who are using it, the reporting managers, the program managers, have to tell their team members to do it. So it is through them. Take their inputs, make the change, run a pilot. Very, very important. See where things have gone wrong, where things can be enhanced, what are the process gaps. Then redesign it, roll it out, and ensure that it is integrated to the larger talent strategy process, which you spoke about. Nothing can work in isolation, because if the process is in isolation, it will remain as a silo and nobody will look into the process. Always ensure that it's integrated to the larger scheme of things, and people are partnered into doing that. As HR, sometimes what we do is we get to read a lot of books, we attend a lot of conferences, learn some new concepts, come back and try to roll it out. Business is not going to accept it. Nobody is going to accept it. So research the topic well, pick up people, business leaders, sell the idea, sell the concept, tell why this change should be done. Because change is calling for investment. Change will call for disruption. Change will call for investing time and effort. So we have to sell the concept, why this change is required, how this change is going to impact the larger organization vision, how it is going to help us outperform our competition. Pick up the ideas, pilot in a small unit, see the learning, see the impact, make enhancements, changes, roll out the redesign process, and ensure that it is integrated to the business. This is about making any change to talent management process. If you are making one, be it recruitment, be it performance management, be it leadership development, be it succession planning, be it compensation, whatever nuts and bolts we spoke about in the earlier slide, wherever you want to make a change in a phased manner, thought through by taking inputs from the business and having some champions from the business who will support you in this journey. So this is a brief about the talent management process, talent management cycle of process redesign and design. So when we are doing all these things, planning this, going through these things in detail, the world is changing. The world is changing really, really fast. As we speak, by end of 2020, there would be 6 billion smartphones in the market, right? There is 9 times more data that has been collected in the servers in the last 2 years. Things are really changing. Some interesting stats here for all of you to ponder, right? By 2020, 40% of the workforce will become contingent. That means they will not work full-time, married to one job. 30 minutes back, I spoke about talent engagement and making them wedded into the organization so that they can walk the extra mile, they can contribute. Now, 30 minutes down the line, I'm telling you, things are changing, right? 40% of the workforce will become contingent. They will not be working full-time. That's what we call the gig economy, G-I-G, gig economy, right? The lifespan, more people will be working longer in the organization, right? Earlier was a time when at the age of 25, they entered the organization, they work for about 30 years, 35 years, they are 60, and they would exit the organization. But it's not the case now. As the life sciences improves, the health services are improving, hospital facilities are improving, things are improving really fast, and people are living longer. They are productive longer. So they'll be spending more time in the workplace. Now, when the elders are spending more time, seniors are spending more time, the youngsters are also entering the market, the workforce. So as HR, for us, the complexity has increased manifold, right? We're talking about different generations working at the workplace. If you see the slide on skill, half-life of skill is 2 to 5.5 years now. That means, if you remember nuclear physics, we're talking about half-life, where it is reduced to half. So if I have acquired a skill, it reaches half its life in 5 years. That means every 10 years, we have to upgrade our skills. right? In some cases, it is 2 years. So you have to constantly upgrade. Now, so much of challenges in the field of HR then, right? If things are changing so fast. If you see the lifespan of S&P companies, Standard and Poor's, right? The companies are moving out of the list of 500. Earlier, they were staying in the list for years together, but every 15 years, it is now changing. The list is changing. Why? New companies are moving up. Companies who can't change are falling down the pecking order. Human and machines working together. You have been using smartphones. All of us have become smart. We are having this conversation on Google Meet, right? Or be it Zoom, be it WebEx. This has become a part of our life. And thanks to COVID, this has become a business model now, right? Work from anywhere. So we will be interfacing with machines a lot. For the last 1 hour, I'm talking to a machine. If my grandmom sees me talking to a laptop, what she must be thinking? What is this? This guy has gone crazy talking to a laptop, right? So human-machine interface is going to increase by the passing day. If you see the bottom stats, currently 2018 it was 29 to 71%. 2022 they are saying it can increase up to 42% by machines, and 2025 machines will overshoot nearly so much of machines in our life that percentage of work by machines will be 52%, humans will be 48. Interesting stats. Why I'm talking about these? Because on one side you're talking about talent management, but the other side the world is changing really, really fast. So what is happening and what will continue to happen is this. Okay, so let's go into this slide. This talks about 4 major change that we see. Talent demography is changing. The work design is changing. The behaviors are changing. And there is a huge digital transformation happening. Right? So let's focus on these 4 aspects. These are the changes that's happening. And it is happening really, really fast. As I spoke about, the current workforce has now 5 combinations of talent. 5. We have the veterans who are typically born between 1920 to 1945. Then we have the baby boomers who have worked between 1945 to 1965, the World War period. Then we have the Gen X, 1965 to 1980. Then we have the Gen Y or the millennials who are up from 1981 to 1999, right? Now, what you want to call the next gen? Because if you say 2000 and this 2020, in 2 years down the line, you will have the next gen coming to the workforce. The Gen Z, if you want to call them, XYZ, Gen Z, right? So 5 different generations, 5 different thinking process, 5 different approaches to work, 5 different ways of doing work, 5 different approaches to relationship. So complex the workforce is going to be. So as HR, we will have huge challenges dealing with this different set of people, working and ensuring that all are aligned. As I said, talent mobility, people are willing to move across the globe. If the role is good, they're willing to take up new responsibilities. So there is no hesitation that, okay, I belong to the eastern part of the country, I will stay only in the belt of Orissa, West Bengal, Bihar, right? I'm in southern part, I'll restrict myself to only Chennai and Bangalore in India, right? It is not only within the country, it is transnational. I'm willing to go to Germany and work in Munich or Düsseldorf or Frankfurt if the role is good. I'm flexible, I'm open. That thinking process has changed. So people are mobile. So there is a need for the HR to come out with policies to handle this kind of mobility. It is not one set of people. We'll have different set of people coming into the workforce because of talent mobility, the diversity and inclusion. So in my company, I deal with associates from Mexico, I deal with associates from Japan, I deal with associates from China, I deal with associates from Germany, US, UK. Different thinking process, different ways of doing work. But it has its strength, diversity has its strength, because it gives you diversity of thought. Different thoughts comes in that helps in strengthening our processes. digital natives and digital immigrants, if I can use the word. The digital natives are people who are born with the mobile phones. They are the natives. They have been living through the mobile phones. The senior generations are digital immigrants because they've just started using mobile phone. They've started using WhatsApp, and I get WhatsApp messages from my mom. I'm so happy about it. She is the digital immigrant. She has just adopted WhatsApp, and she started sending me messages, good morning messages, and sending me bhajans and pictures of God and goddesses, right? So they are immigrants. So we are talking about two different generations. So when I'm talking to my daughter, she is a digital native. She is into Instagrams. She's talking about tickers, and she talks about uploading, downloading. She's so fast with the phones, right? This is at a home front. Think about the same set of people at the workplace. People don't know how to use WebEx, and the onset of people who are using WebEx and other communication tools on the mobile phones, right? So you have to deal with multiple set of people. Some says that, sorry, I cannot work on these machines. These machines are so old and so slow. My mobile phones are much more faster. Why can't I create an app for this? So you're dealing with this kind of people whose thinking is completely different. So if as HR, I say that this is the policy, this is what you have to do, it won't work. It's like one size doesn't fit all. You have a size, different size for different people because their body structure is different. Here, the thinking structure is different. The way they think is completely different. So you can't have a uniform policy. The policies have to be customized, has to be tailor-made to meet the needs of this kind of demographics. The work design, the work itself is changing. I spoke about the contingency worker, the part-time worker, the freelancers. Nobody is going to get wedded to the work going forward. 3 hours in a day, I would like to work here in X company. 3 hours in a day, remaining part of the day, I would like to work in Y company. Remaining 3 hours is for me. I want to learn swimming. I want to go for kayaking. I want to contribute to the society. I want to be a part of the NGO. Are our HR processes aligned to this? No, we can't handle such kind of aspiring people that they want to work freelancing. Policies have to change. Location independent. Now it is really independent. Thanks to COVID, people are working at different parts of the world. But earlier, when we say that let's work from home, the business guys used to say work from home. Home is for home. You can't work from home. But the young generation, this generation says that I can work from anywhere, anytime. Why are you stopping me? I have my Google Meet, I have my WebEx, I have my Zoom. I can talk to my team whenever I want to. I can give them feedback regularly, work with the virtual teams. It has to be location independent. So what will happen to the real estate? Nobody's going to take the buildings. People are going to work from home. People can work from, they go on mountaineering and sit in the cliffside, and maybe they will be talking to their virtual teams and talking about business, right? So it is location independent. We're talking about BYOD, bring your own device. So I don't want to use a machine or a laptop which is Intel Pentium 3. My mobile is much more faster than the laptop provided by the company. So now the issue of information security comes in. Can anybody bring their own device to office? The policies have to change. Things have to change. BYOD, bring your own device, right? This is the way the work design is changing. It is location independent, time independent, real time, and people choose what they want to do when they want to do. Next is about behavior. Behaviors are really, really changing. Earlier, there was no concept of talking about your own job, what you are doing. Don't beat your own drum. That's what people used to say. But here it is about sharing. I have to share in the social media. I have to talk about what I am doing, what are my achievements, how am I contributing. And this not only brings in the concept of collaboration, crowdsourcing, taking views from others. So when I'm talking about such social thing, are my HR policies aligned for this? Can I have a bulletin board or a public platform in my intranet where people can talk anything about the policies and processes? Can I say this policy is bad, this doesn't work, this HR processes are not aligned to my business needs? Are we so open, so transparent? Can we allow that? Our policies have to change. HR mindset has to change. Can we do such a thing? Let's be very frank and open here. Let's put up a board like a Facebook, internal Facebook. People can write and comment. It can be moderated though, but yes, it's important, it's required. Because people are becoming social. They want to contribute. They want to collaborate. It's not that I work in closed door. I take views from others. A lot of collaborations are coming up. The thinking process is changing. Right? Lot of thoughts on sustainability, long term. Let me contribute to the Mother Earth. Lot of people are leaving full-time, very high-paying jobs to go and work in village, work with the farmers, support them in agribusiness, bring technology to the agricultural front or local artisans, because they want to go for sustainability, more giving back to the society. People say that, okay, 3 months in a year I will work in the company and remaining period I want to serve the society. Can my policy support that? Is my policy aligned to encourage this kind of behavior? May not be, but the society is changing. My talent tomorrow will ask me for these things. So as HR professionals, are we ready? Is what is the question. Digital transformation, this is big. This is really, really big, and it's moving really, really fast. Automations, IoTs, Internet of Things, bots, lot of devices. When you open up a website, a small chat box opens automatically and starts answering your question. There's nobody. The call centers will go over the time. The robots will start responding to the queries. What will happen to the employment of those people? So as HR, we have to think about those evolving processes, evolving systems. Wearable devices. People will start using smartphones, smartwatches, and wellness comes into forefront, right? My heartbeat says that I'm stressed out because HR is not able to create a good work environment. Real-time data is coming up. Health and wellness will be in the forefront in the coming years. With a lot of stress at the workplace, a lot of anxiety, people working alone, people are not coming together in groups. There is separate, different kind of stress and anxiety would also come into place. So as HR, we have to ensure that people's well-being is taken care of. And our policies and processes also have to be aligned in those lines, keeping in mind all these changes that's happening, be it the demographics, be it the work design, be it the behavior, or be it the technology, right? Data analytics on the bottom, tons and tons of data is there. And lots of analysis can be done from those, and interpretations can be taken out of it, right? It's very important to draw the correlations and learnings from those data, what it means, because every data will speak something. So you have to go through the data, understand what it means and how it is important for the organization. This is what is happening around the world when we're busy doing hiring, recruitment, performance assessment, potential assessment. So we have to be alert. We have to look around and see what's happening. So as HR professional, we have task at hand, big task at hand, right? The skills are changing. If you see, the jobs will change, the type of jobs will change, freelancing, gig economy, technologies are changing. These are the new areas that's changing really, really fast and will be creating the jobs. Data and AI is what will create more jobs, engineering and cloud computing, people and culture. That is our area, right? HR. So our jobs are safe. So people and culture is an evolving area that will continue to be there because people at the end of the day is the foundation, the building block for any organization. Product development, marketing, and content. These are the 5 areas as per World Economic Forum where more jobs will be created in the coming years. So as a closing statement, I would say as HR professionals, we should see, we should think, we should act, right? So see things, what's happening all around us. What are the trends? What is disrupting? What is happening around us? Keeping our ears and eyes open, right? Because at the end of the day, we have to contribute for the organization's growth. Then think in terms of what process changes we have to do. What are the drivers? What are the motivators? What are the demotivators? How can we create a culture where everybody is striving towards the vision of the company? And then at the end of the day, the rubber has to meet the road, right? So it has to be implemented. So when we implement, act on it, and ensure that it is rolled out effectively, take feedback from people, make process changes, redesign, roll out. See, think, act, and keep our ears and eyes open. I'm done with my presentation.
Thank you, sir. Now, sir, we would be taking few questions that you have received from the participants through the chat box. So the first question here is from Miss Abhipsha Mishra. She wants to know some examples of organizations that are implementing shadow board or reverse mentoring.
Okay. Shadow board concept has been extensively used at Mahindras and Mahindra. So most of the Mahindra group companies are using shadow board. In this concept, what happens? We hire people from the business schools, top-notch business schools, put them through rigorous assessment process. We have assessment development centers, case study analysis, verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning. After doing those assessments, we put them through a shadow board. They make some business case presentations to the business leaders also. Once shortlisted, they'll be working with the key CXOs, Chief Executive Officers, and they become a part of the shadow board. The example are the Mahindra Group companies, even Tech Mahindra does it.
Okay, sir. Sir, can we say that these are few simulations that these participants go through, these candidates go through?
No, it's not simulation. It is the part of their job. For 1 full year, they will be shadowing the CXOs, and CXOs will be giving them some projects and assignments through the year. And suppose, for example, let me give you the example of Mexico again. Now, business leader thinks that we should go into Mexico, right? Fine, it's one statement. So we can ask the shadow board, do you think our business is good enough to go to Mexico? Is it the right time? Will you get the right kind of talent? Is it worth investing there? So these people would go through our proposals, ideas, and thoughts, and they can say that, okay, this is not the right time. I think 6 months down the line, we can go there because these are the reasons, these are the new laws, these are the new acts coming in. So this way, they not only learn the business, they also help us find flaws and gaps in the processes because the mindset is different, the thinking process is different.
So, sir, we can say it's kind of a on-the-job training.
On-the-job training is very basic. On the job is, suppose I am a HR person, right? Done my MBA. I work with the person who is doing performance management in rolling out performance management process. I'm learning that job. But when I'm a shadow board member, I have moved up the ladder. My competency is here, but the kind of task I've taken up is here. Very high in terms of proficiency level. On the job is very basic.
Okay, sir. And sir, she's also asking, how do we identify the shadow board?
Okay, so it's a complex process in the sense we have to send out mails, invite interested associates who are interested to become a part of the forum. You can have the assessment ratings, written test, group discussion, case study analysis, shortlist 10-15 people, put them through interviews with the CXOs, those who are the young talents who have the spark, they can be made a part of the shadow board. They can
So
reach
it's
out,
a kind of recruitment drive only.
It can be internal, it can be external. If you're looking at going outside to hire people, it is a recruitment drive. When you are doing it internally among the employees, you have to have your battery of tests to do that.
Right, sir. So another question is from Miss Anita. She's asking, how effective can crisscross career movement be for the individual and the organization?
Okay. Crisscross of career is very, very important and very, very powerful. This ensures that people, when they move from one function to another, they have an understanding and appreciation of the other function, right? Like, for example, you get to hear, you don't understand the pain I go through, right? These are the phrases that we use in business context. We say that you don't know how HR works. So here is a person, a business leader, who has moved from operations to HR or from HR to operations. There are many cases where the HR guys also become the CXOs and the CEOs of the company. There are many operations team members, they become the salesperson. By doing this crisscross, we understand the organization much better. This helps us become leaders. As we move up the managerial ladder, we don't have to be only HR, only operations, only sales. As business leader, I have to take organization-wide decision. So when we crisscross, we have good understanding. deep appreciation of the other function.
Right,
I
sir.
strongly believe in that, and we do encourage this in the organization. In many organizations, it is mandatory. After 5 years or 6 years in a role, they move them out into some other roles. It is painful, but as an organization, if the structures are in place, we can encourage the person to take up those roles.
So is it same as job rotation?
It is same as job rotation, but typically what happens, job rotations can be within the same function, like HR, performance management to compensation management to recruitment. Within HR, you do job rotations. But when you do a crisscross, you move out of HR and go to finance, from HR to operations. That is the real challenge, right? And that is really, really demanding. The individual has to take the pain, the organization also has to take the pain.
So it is kind of departmental, from one department to other.
That's correct.
Right, sir. So another question here I can see is from Miss Someshri. She is asking, sir, if you can add anything on diversity or talent hiring, positioning on basis of gender roles and all of those.
Okay. So I spoke about the D&I, right? Diversity and inclusion. This is very, very important, and this is in the forefront these days. So you get to see that in the board of directors, if the company is more than 300 crores, there has to be a woman director. Why that came up? It's not quota system. Let's try to understand that. It is not quota system. It is basically to encourage talent from different corners. Now, with the Supreme Court ruling about the third gender, right, and they having their own rights, the workplace will become more inclusive so that you don't alienate them. We also bring them into the fold. And when you are hiring, we have those hiring strategies in place. It's called the equal employment opportunity, right? So we don't discriminate and don't based on gender, based on race, caste, creed, or religion, or whatever categories, right? And this ensures that when you bring people from different domains, different society, different structure, the talent pool improves, the quality of thinking process improves. Else it will be a very, very blinkered approach, like a blinkers we put on the horses so that they don't get distracted. Here we're not talking about blinkers, we're talking about diverse thought. Let more and more ideas come in, the crowdsourcing, what we call, then we churn out and come out with the best process. So as a recruitment strategy, D&I is very, very important. Even there are companies who hire on a program called starting over. That means people like especially female employees who leave the organization to start a family and run the family. After 4 or 5 years, they want to come back to the workforce. It's becoming really, really challenging. So few companies run some special drives to bring them back to the workforce. So this way, we'll be able to use it for hiring. And it's a great talent strategy.
Right, sir. Another question here. She is asking, sir, how to manage talent resources in an organization as employees' growth is linked with company success or having merger and acquisition. Any related examples with your vast experience?
Sorry, say that question again.
How to manage talent in organization as employees' growth is linked with company success, or even during mergers and acquisitions, how do we go about managing talent?
Okay, it's a big question, 2 parts to it. How do you manage talent when the organization is growing or not growing is one question. Second question is how to manage talent when there is a merger and acquisition. There are 2 questions here. The first question is about the talent management when the organization is growing or not growing. When the organization is growing, the talent management programs are more powerful and you can roll them out more effectively because organization is growing. You are expanding to new geographies, you are expanding to new markets. So talent mobility comes into picture, succession planning, role rotation. There are a lot of opportunities there. So somebody says that I am aspiring to become a sales manager. Currently the person is sales executive. So if the organization is growing, if they're on the growth path, then my aspirations can be met. There can be some plans around it, right? Because the organization is growing, new roles are evolving, new geographies are evolving, and I can be fit into the role based on the aspiration. But in contrast, if the organization is not growing, I have an aspiration to become a sales manager, but there's already a sales manager sitting on top of me, right? And when the organization is not growing, that person is not also growing. That person is not going anywhere. Unless the person resigns and goes, that position is blocked. New geographies are not there. So I cannot grow. So when you're talking about new programs and talent management, when it is linked to organization growth, then only those investments can come in, those plans can come in. If it is kind of a static organization, then yes, the talent management also has to be to manage. It will be more of a operational than transformational. Transformational happens when the organization is growing. Else it has to be just business as usual, what we call in common patterns. Second question is about M&A. Now, when the M&A happens, the talent management is a different ball game altogether, because you're talking about marriage of two organizations, right? It's like marriage in two families, right? So different food habits, different culture, different way of thinking, different values, different behavior. How does the marriage happen? So that's the same way M&A happens, is the beautiful marriage between two organizations. Things can go wrong if the HR doesn't do the due diligence in terms of what is the culture of this organization, what's the culture of the other organization, culture of organization A and B, how it has to be married, whether it has to be married over the time or it has to be immediate. Depending on the business strategy, those strategies of M&A can be put in place. But yes, talent management in an M&A setup is completely different altogether, because the company culture is different, the talent pool is different, the way the talent has been growing the organization is different. So you have to have a uniform policy ensuring that the best of both the worlds are taken into account in defining the new policy for the new organization.
Right, sir. So another question here is, with 133 million new job roles emerging, the career chart or planning for students, will it also change drastically?
Yes, it is going to change drastically. It's very, very important that we have to upgrade our skills, constantly upgrade our skills, acquire new certifications, acquire new skills, and most important, the willingness to learn. It is not like the earlier days that we do one MBA and that will continue to give you the salary for the remaining part of the life. It's not going to be there, because tomorrow what I was doing in terms of recruitment and scouting of resume and shortlisting of resume, now the machine can do by keying some keywords, right? We do some keyword search and the resume is in place, right? Now we're talking about transactional items. The bots are taking over. So if there are some set of 25 questions or 35 repeated questions, right, then the bot can respond to those questions. So what happens to the person who is managing the call center, that desk? So there's a need to constantly upgrade our skills with the changing times. It is for the students, it is for the working professionals. And this is only required when you want to grow. If you want to be static and you want to be where you are, then it is individual's choice.
Right, sir. Sir, another question here is, with bots and artificial intelligence coming into picture in the HR domain, how about manpower talent handling with robo integration and in new upcoming digitalization technologies?
At the end of the day, let's understand human beings have the most powerful brain, have the most powerful mind. They are the people with emotions. They are the people with thinking processes, right? So they are here to say it's not that the machines will take over. At the end of the day, it is the human being that will be managing the machines. But yes, the transactional items will move to automation. The transactional items will be taken over by bots. So there is a need to manage both the aspirations of the individuals, the emotions of the individuals, the psyche of the individuals, and ensuring that they constantly upgrade the skills while ensuring that the transactional non-value add items moves into machines.
Right, sir.
And most importantly, these machines will give us data in terms of analytics, but interpretation of the data, correlation of the data, what the data really means, how the data integrates to the entire organization is the job of the human being. That can never be written off.
Yes, sir. Sir, another question is from Mr. Guru Bandhu. He's asking, sir, please explain how to retain talent, especially highly specialized kind of talent, apart from salary hike or paying extra incentive practically.
Yeah, so interesting question from Guru. Now, again, I'm saying one size doesn't fit all. One policy will not fit everybody. So you have to understand, most important is the individual's aspiration. Now, somebody is motivated by money, somebody is motivated by more work, somebody is motivated by taking up a managerial role, somebody says that I want to be an individual contributor, somebody says that I want to manage a business or a geography. So, to understand what are the individual aspirations, based on that, those high potential employees can be retained, because as rightly said by Guru, it is very difficult to retain those highly efficient and highly competent professionals, because they are bound to be picked up by competition. So it is very, very important that HR has to engage with them more, understand individuals' aspiration, right? And based on individual aspirations, try to come out with policies and processes around that. So sometimes there will be need to customize. One size doesn't fit all. Again and again, I'm telling you. Gone are the times of one policy rollout and then done with it, right? That's why we use a beautiful word there: pray and pray. You spray it, right, and pray that it works. It won't work that way. It has to be highly customized and highly individualistic going forward.
Right, sir. Sir, here Swati is asking, what do you mean by HR silos? I would just like to add my question to her question. I would just want to know that nowadays department silos are seen as a growing pain for most of the organizations of all the sizes, to be precise. So how do we break down the barriers?
Yeah, I'm also living through the problem, so we're trying to bring about some change. See, HR silos are basically when the departments don't talk to each other, right? Now, there is a need for recruitment. Fine, the recruiter recruits, right? Sends out the offer, and the person has come for joining. The onboarding team, which is a different team altogether, doesn't even know that these people have come to office for joining. The recruitment team has done a fabulous job. Best set of resources, best set of skill, right kind of candidates identified, but they have not told the joining team that this set of people are coming to join on a particular date. The experience is bad. Correct? The recruitment team has not collaborated with the compensation management team to identify the right kind of compensation for a particular set of skills. They have not done proper benchmarking of salary analysis. As a result, they have brought people either very highly paid or very lowly paid. The highly paid guys are going to create problems in the existing system because there will be internal disparity. And the lowly paid guys, once they come into the system and will know that, okay, people have been paid much higher for the same skill sets, they will start complaining. So there is a need to integrate all the processes and systems. The training department cannot do a training without a proper performance management done and the need analyzed through a performance management process. It cannot work in isolation. Or training department will come out of its own calendar to meet the training hours, because training hour is a KRA. They make their own calendar and do the training, but the business needs something else and the individual needs something else. So that's why I've been saying that everything has to be integrated so that it is a seamless experience for everyone and it meets the organization requirements.
Okay, sir. So another question here, last question for the day. Swati is asking, where do you get accurate data on attrition? She's asking about the source.
Okay. See, attrition data is from the internal HRMS, depending on the kind of HRMS you have in place that tracks the people movement. So some use SAP, some use PeopleSoft. That gives you a good view of how many people have exited the organization, how many people have joined the organization, and what is the average headcount for a particular period, be it a month or a quarter or half yearly or for the year. So these are the base data points that comes from HRMS uh, for analyzing the attrition. But again, these are raw numbers, so you have to go into the details of understanding in terms of why the person left, what is the background, whether it is a new joiner who has left within a month's time, or it is a trainee who has gone into and left within a short time. It all depends on your organization's policies.
Right, sir. Ms. Madhumita, please mute your audio.
Okay.
These were the questions for the day, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir, for joining with us and sparing your valuable time, sir. It was really a very insightful deliberation. I am sure all our participants are enriched with new knowledge. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Marika, and thank you, Professor Bhaktamandu Das, and thank you, Dr. Vishwajit Patnaik, for giving me the opportunity. It was great interacting with the participants.
Sir, our participants are requesting you to please share your PPT if you may.
Yeah, sure, I will do that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, so much.